Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into the incredible story of the Prophet Ṣāliḥ and his people, the Thamud. Now, this is a powerful account from the Quran, and it's really a timeless lesson about amazing skill, about blinding pride, and about what happens when a clear sign from God is just thrown away. So let's get right into it.
And you know, this whole story really boils down to one central question. What happens when a miracle, something sent as crystal clear proof, is met not with wonder or with faith, but with mockery? That's the core tension that drives everything that's about to happen. So keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through this.
All right, so first things first, who were the people of Thamud? Well, let me tell you, these were not just some random ancient tribe. These were true masters of their environment. They were powerful, they were prosperous, and they were unbelievable engineers.
So picture this. They came after the people of Ad, and they inherited this amazing, prosperous land. And their genius was in what they did with it. They built these grand, sprawling palaces out on the flat plains. But what they were famous for, what was truly their masterpiece, was carving these intricate, beautiful homes directly into the sides of mountains. I mean, this gave them everything: wealth, security, a real sense of power. And all of it, of course, was a blessing from God.
But you know how it goes. With all that success, with all that power, something else can start to creep in, right? Arrogance. And their prophet Salih, who was one of their own, he came to them with a really simple reminder. He just said, hey, remember where all these good things came from. Remember the favors of Allah, and don't use these blessings to cause corruption. It was a call for gratitude, not pride.
So, did they listen? Nope. Instead, they challenged him. They demanded a sign, a physical miracle, to prove that Salih was for real. And this is where the story takes a major turn. A clear, undeniable sign was sent to them, a test that was just impossible to ignore.
And the miracle they got? It was a she-camel. Now, the commentators say she emerged, fully formed, right out of solid rock at God's command. I mean, just imagine that. This was no ordinary animal. She was called nāqatullāh, the she-camel of God, to really emphasize how special and sacred she was. Her very existence was the proof they asked for, and her presence was now a living, breathing test for every single one of them.
And you know, the test itself was so simple. The main rule was, of course, to worship the one God who gave them everything. And as for this miraculous camel, the conditions were even simpler. Just leave her alone. Let her graze wherever she wants, and whatever you do, do not harm her. That's it. If they crossed that one line, they were promised a painful punishment. It was a very clear boundary.
But what this seemingly simple test did was, well, it blew the lid off the deep divisions already running through their society. It stopped being about the camo pretty quickly and started being all about power, status, and pride. It showed everyone just how divided they really were.
And right away, two groups formed. On one side, you had the arrogant, wealthy elites. They'd go up to the believers, who were mostly the poor and the humble, and they would mock them, saying with this tone of total condescension, "So, you actually know that Salih is sent from his Lord?" But the believers, they didn't flinch. They replied with total conviction, "Indeed, we are believers." And to that, the elites just made it plain and simple. Well, we are disbelievers. The lines were drawn.
And this right here is maybe the most important point of the whole story. The elites weren't lacking evidence. The miracle camel was literally walking among them. So the rejection, it wasn't about a lack of proof. It was an act of pure defiance. They refused to accept a truth that might challenge their power or their social status. Their pride was just too big to allow it.
And this open defiance, this stubborn refusal to accept a clear sign, well, it can only lead to one place. This is the tragic climax of the story, where they decide to do the one and only thing they were explicitly warned never to do.
So what did they do? They doubled down. Their response wasn't just quiet disbelief. It was active, arrogant defiance. They weren't just going to ignore the warning. They were going to smash it to pieces. They basically decided to call God's bluff.
And you can just hear the sneer in their voices. They go right up to him and taunt him, saying, "Oh, Salih, bring us what you promised us if you're really one of the messengers." They weren't just breaking the rule anymore. They were openly mocking the very idea of divine consequence.
And then they did it. They hamstrung the she-camel, killing this sacred sign from God. And what's really important to know here is that the sources are clear. Even though only a few of them actually carried out the act, the whole tribe was held responsible. Why? Because they all approved of it. They were all in on it. And that was the point of no return.
After they committed this terrible act,
the Prophet Ṣāliḥ gave them one last chilling warning. He just looked at them and said, "Enjoy yourselves in your homes for 3 more days." Can you just imagine hearing that? It wasn't a threat. It was a promise, a terrifyingly short countdown before the punishment would arrive without fail.
And when those 3 days were up, the promise was fulfilled. A violent earthquake, the Quran calls it the Rajfa, just seized them. And as if that wasn't enough, commentators say it was paired with this deafening, thunderous blast from the sky. It was sudden, it was absolute, and there was nowhere to run.
And this is where the lesson becomes so powerful and so deeply ironic. Those very mountains they were so proud of, the ones they had so brilliantly carved into what they thought were impenetrable fortresses, they offered zero protection. In the end, their greatest source of security and pride became their tomb.
Looking over the ruins of his home, of his people, Salih turns away and speaks these final, sorrowful words. He had done his part. He delivered the message. He gave them sincere advice. Their destruction didn't happen because they weren't warned. It happened because, as he says, you do not like advisors. They simply refuse to listen.
And that right there leaves us with a question that echoes through time, long after the Thamūd were gone. Why is it that sometimes the most sincere, the most truthful advice is the hardest thing for us to hear? It's a powerful thought to end on, connecting their ancient story right back to our own human nature. Thank you for joining me for this explainer.